Hi, everybody. Get ready to dive into the world of artificial intelligence, software development, and the future with none other than Ray of devbyrayray fame. In this fun chat, we'll explore how artificial intelligence is revolutionizing the way we code and develop software. All of this is starting now. Ray, great to meet you. Just before we go too far, can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, of course. I'm Ray. On Twitter, better known as devbyrayray. It's also my blog. So I mainly talk about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and the last couple of years mainly JavaScript. Um, I'm being a front-end developer for since 2009, and I'm really happy with all these developments and frameworks and diving into learning new stuff every day. So that's the best summary about me.
Cool. Yeah, and I definitely want to pick your brain a bit on some of the newer developments that come on. But before we get there,
Cool.
though, what got you started in programming?
What? Yeah. Um, well, I started my education in I was doing a little bit of Photoshop and doing a little bit design, and then I discovered at school I discovered CSS. Well, that set me totally on fire. I knew Photoshop, then slicing all these images, and they can automatically convert it to HTML tables and have a cool design. So that's what made me start, and from there I was totally on fire, building cool layouts for users, and it made me really happy to do that, and also the fact that I didn't know that I love learning new things so much, and that got me started basically. Yeah, yeah.
What was the first thing you built, or do you remember building?
It was I was going to a church with my parents, and over there I thought, well, this church had a website, and I thought, well, it could use a redesign. So that was basically my first project, building the website for the church, and it was all static HTML, only tables. But I had so much fun with it. So that was my real first project. That was really cool. But it was ugly as hell.
I mean, it
So
was the late mid 2000s, basically. So
yeah,
you'll be forgiven for
yes.
that.
Oh yeah. Oh, thank God. No, it was fun. It was really fun, and yeah, that was even before I learned CSS at school. Um, so I had a fun time with that.
Do you write all the HTML by hand, or do you use a tool like FrontPage or Dreamweaver or PageSite?
Back back then, it was Notepad. It was
Notepad. All
plain
right, you did
Notepad,
it.
and there's a funny story with that, and that was I knew a guy from another church who built their website, and I asked him, "Well, how did you build that website?" And the only answer that I got, well, just with Notepad, and that was the answer I had, and I had to search from that moment. So that was a pretty rough start, but it made me start. It made me curious. So that was cool.
And when did you start blogging and starting to share your knowledge with others?
Well, that was a bit later. Uh, well, I think I was graduated, and I think I was 1.5 years, maybe 2 years into my job. I think it was more like 1.5 years into my job, and then uh, I, that that company had a blog, but they didn't write that often. And I thought, well, maybe I can try to write one because I had learned so much new stuff. So I thought, well, let's give it a shot. And that boss said, well, go ahead, do it if you like it. And at that time, I was mainly writing in Dutch. Well, I know from myself that my Dutch grammar, and I'm born in the Netherlands, but my Dutch grammar is really bad. So yeah, I got a lot of help from the marketing department that made my blog a little bit better, and well, that helped me start writing. And from that moment, I've never stopped. I just continued with blogging tutorials. Mainly after I left the company, I started really blogging about HTML, CSS, and all these. Well, that was the starting point, and after it goes to GitHub. At that time, it was Grunt, Gulp.
Yep.
All those things were, yeah, everything that I touched. I wrote a blog about it, and mainly because it helped me to learn. So I was not starting a blog to become rich and famous and the ultimate goal that most people maybe have. But I started to blog because that was my own notebook, and I could look back into it, what I've learned, and well, it happened a couple times that I was googling something and I thought, oh, wait a minute, that's my blog. Oh, I wrote that earlier. So I just went back to it. Oh, that was how it goes. Well, that's a great feeling, and also that sometimes that colleagues send me links. Ray, I was googling and found another blog from you. So thanks for that. And that makes me happy to help others. But that was not the goal that I had when starting with it. I started for myself, and that developed over time. Uh, yeah, to do it for others, and mainly tutorials and solving bugs or problems. That because that is what most developers will Google, bugs.
The funny thing is that there's so many people that I've interviewed so far, and they've been blogging and
Hmm.
doing this for a very long time. And I always ask the same question because in the back of my mind, I'm trying to create a pattern here. I'm like, I have a hunch on what makes them want to do this, and it's all almost the same thing. Is that
Yeah,
they were doing something, they had some difficulty, and they were like, I can do a better job explaining this and what's being done,
yeah,
and they put it in their own tone of voice, and they keep doing that. And I think longer term, if you think about, in business or psychology to talk about like what motivates
hmm.
people to keep doing things that are very difficult. Blogging is not easy. It's
Oh
in many
no.
ways a labor of love. How do you
Oh yeah.
keep motivated to do this? It turns out there's this whole thing about like, intrinsic motivation. You're doing things
Yeah.
because you want to better your knowledge of it. By writing it down, by sharing
True.
it, you become better at doing things. If anything else
Yeah.
happens separately, it gets popular. People are like watching and so on. It's secondary. And that
True.
motivation is never going to change because you always want to learn. You always want to try new things. It's in your personality. And
Yeah.
that's what helps, at least I've seen in terms of pattern building, blogs that I've been
Yeah.
doing for a long time. That's what separates them from those blogs that are created for the sole purpose of there's a trend going on. I want to capitalize on it very quickly. They
Yeah.
start off with great fanfare and excitement. And 6 months later, that's it. They're not doing it anymore because
Yeah.
it's never a one-to-one mapping between like I blog, I'm going to be successful tomorrow. A lot of it is timing, a lot of it is luck, and it's consistency. You just got to keep
True.
doing it day in and day out.
Yeah.
Eventually, you'll get there. And I was watching an interview of Mr. Beast, the very famous
Oh yeah.
YouTuber, and
Yes.
how he's been
Yeah.
making videos. And he talked about like how for the first several years, the first 100 or so videos, nobody watched it, but he kept at it and
No.
kept improving it slightly over and over again, and
Yeah.
that's
Just
what
keep
helped him to
going.
get here. And I
Yeah.
always wonder, like, how many bloggers, if they just did that, if they kept doing it for year one, year two, and then going forward, that they will become not just successful externally, but their own internal motivation and being able to say that they've done something
True.
pretty meaningfully complicated would be
Yeah.
hit as well.
Yeah, true. And it's also, well, I'm, to be honest, I'm not very consistent with blogging. Sometimes I have months that I don't write anything because I had something else on my mind. And other months, uh, I'm writing 10 blog posts because, well, that's how my creative flow works. And it's also because of, well, then got challenged by some bug or learned something new. Or right now, it's, well, I think my last blog was December or January or something. Well, that was mainly because I started an own project, and I'm doing that. And well, yeah, I'm not consistent with it. And to build it successfully, well, you should be consistent, but I don't care. I do it for myself. It's,
Yeah. And we're measuring things in terms of like years of timeline. You zoom out, those 1 month you're not blogging won't even be noticeable because when you zoom out that far, you just see a consistent streak of content being
true.
shared, whether it is through your blog, through your Twitter, or through your other channels, which I've
Yeah,
been following for a very long time. Huge fan of it, always enjoyed it. To me, you're
nice.
like, yeah, you're one of the more consistent bloggers because I don't look at it like, did Ray blog on Monday? Is he blog on Wednesday? It's more like, okay, when I look over a period of time, I see a narrative, I see a
Yeah,
theme, I see the work that you've been doing and sharing.
yeah,
And
true,
that to me, in many ways, is also consistency because there's no
true.
end goal here. It's not like you must blog X
No,
number of times by year number 2 in order to be considered a consistent blogger. It's more of like,
true.
sure, if you blog once a month and you're doing it for 20 years, you zoom out enough, that's a lot of blog posts. That's like more than several hundred
Yes,
blog posts at that
yes.
point. So,
True,
no,
true. That a lot, but I think it's my main goal is uh, keep on delivering value. And right now, while building my own project, I'm delivering value by tweeting. It's like that. So I find it very nice to, yeah, add value to people, inspire them, help them. Yeah, get them started. And I can do that by a tweet, but I can do that also via a blog. I tried also do podcasting or making videos, but I discovered that, well, videos is not my thing. And that's mainly because I love recording tutorials, but I hate the video editing. It's not my thing. So also podcasting is doing my own podcast. Well, you have to be consistent with that, in my opinion. And well, I don't love to listen to my own voice. Let me write. That's my thing.
yeah, you got to do what you enjoy. But mind if I give you a tip on the video
True.
editing piece? Don't
Hmm.
edit the videos. That my take is that
Yeah.
my goal in I record videos of my technical content, and my approach is it's done in one shot, and if there are any mistakes there, they
Yeah.
stay in there, and that's it.
Yeah. True.
It depends on like if your goal is to
Yeah.
get a really polished, kind of video out there. My view is like there are people who like to learn by reading things, and there are people who like to learn by watching or watching someone else do it, just so they get the
Oh
confidence of
yeah.
like, okay, this crazy technique, it actually does work. And what I've personally found is that for that audience, it's okay. I'm purely there, like you, to educate and to teach. I'm not into like making sure
Yeah.
my image or my persona or my style or brand is maintained. It's like it's a technique that I'm working on, explained in a visual way for someone who's listening to follow it. Then that's been reasonably okay. So you get a different type of audience for that.
Yeah.
Someone who's not seeking, like high
True.
quality. Where it's going to be high quality after you do it enough number of times, but it's not going to be like
True.
professional level quality. But that may be okay actually.
Yeah. True, true. Well, I still left my videos I created earlier online, and well, some have bugs in it, and I had to solve them, and I also left it in
Yeah.
there. It's yeah, I have no problem with that because, well, I want to show that even though you have so many years of experience, it doesn't matter. You always have bugs. You always have problems that is only because you're missing a comma
Yep.
and you get stuck for hours. And it happens to everyone,
Exactly.
all the time.
It's relatable because that's what real life is. No one writes
Yeah,
code in like 8 minutes perfectly without any errors. It's going to be like, yeah, there's a bug. Let me bring up the dev tools.
true.
Let me figure out where the line is, why the div is not positioned correctly. Let me add the outline red technique.
Let's let's center that
Yeah,
diff.
exactly. All of these things. So no, that's great
Yeah,
too. Great to just see like your interest and your approach for some of these things. So now let's just go ahead and
yeah,
fast forward to like, basically today and a lot of the interesting things
yeah.
you've been sharing and talking about, which really is around artificial intelligence and the developments there. And
Oh yeah.
so, what's going on there? What's exciting you at this moment?
Well, a lot is happening there because Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, and all these companies that a couple of months we even have heard of are now booming air and doing so much great things. And yeah, I think the main thing was started by ChatGPT by OpenAI. I think that's really got the ball of AI rolling for, well, let's say the normal people normal people like you and me, not the smartest guys, but for us to use AI practically. And that's since that day I heard of it and tried it, I thought, man, I can now have a tool that helps me in writing code, solving problems, and I found that so cool. And then GitHub Copilot came. I thought, well, let's try it. And my employer was supportive. He said, well, we're gonna pay it, no problem, try it out. And it already helps me writing code better. It saves me a lot of time suggesting code. Well, it's not always perfect, but the nice thing is it looks into the context of your whole project, and well, it made me so productive. And that was really helpful. Well, one time, I'm currently working in a team at a Dutch bank, and we're working with Angular. And at one time, there we had an issue with ArcGIS subscriptions, and we thought, well, let's give it a try and ask ChatGPT how we can solve it or what is the issue. And well, mainly by describing the issue that we had, it suggested, oh, do you know if the subscription is still alive when listening to it? Or is and you can see that by using this method. And well, I'm using RxJS for quite some time, but I didn't know that method. So we tried it and we said, well, that subscription is not alive anymore. So that's not weird. Why there is no value in it? Well, that's an example of how you can start talking to ChatGPT and say, well, this is the problem. I have this and this is the context. And it can help you solve the problem. And man, that's mind blowing. I think we live in a wonderful time. Also, yeah, I have not seen uh, many things from Google yet, but yeah, the thing that Microsoft has started with OpenAI, man, it's bizarre. It's really bizarre.
It really is, and
It's
you're mentioning that you got started with web development, where you had to design a website for your church, or redesign it to make it look nicer. And we saw from the latest demos of
yeah,
OpenAI, yeah, today it would have probably been a case where like you take a pencil and a piece of paper, draw a sketch of what you think that page should look like, feed it to the
yeah,
system, and you get back. I'm not going to say it's production grade HTML, CSS, JavaScript, but for
true.
someone who doesn't know anything about it, just wants something in the browser that works, it's fantastic. Like it meets the image
It
of it.
is. Yeah, well, and that's you also see so much people using some other AI platforms to generate content, and I start think lately that okay, yes, you can let ChatGPT write a whole blog post about X topic in JavaScript, but that's nice. And Google have said some things about penalties about the content, uh, but I think generating content should not be about generating content and directly publish it, because be, content becomes valuable for people to read or to watch when it has a certain tone of voice, a certain emotion, a certain, well, for example, if you say, well, I had this problem and this is how I fixed it. Well, that's not what ChatGPT is going to do. ChatGPT is going to say, well, use this method, and you will well sort your array. But I think content still needs that, yeah, human touch. It shouldn't be just AI. Well, I saw some pretty cool things with only doing AI. I was listening to a podcast in the car, and there's a guy. It's a Dutch guy. I don't know his name, but he used Zapier and OpenAI, the ChatGPT API, to uh, fetch content from multiple RSS feeds, uh, taking that to Zapier and summarize it, and then you have a tool that can clone your voice. That has also an API. So he built his whole daily podcast on on that. It's generated with his voice clone, and every day a new podcast episode. And that's really creative. It's not perfect, but it's really cool. But it's cool that we experiment with those things. And yeah,
Yeah, it is
you're gonna see so
fascinating.
much more. Yes, it is. It is. It's. Are you using? I don't know how that is at Google, but uh, do you guys also just use the OpenAI, ChatGPT, GitHub Copilot, or are you maybe secretly developing your own tools?
I, I can't comment too much on what we do, but
I knew that.
publicly
I
though
knew that.
we released Bard a couple of I think actually last week, like
Yeah,
less than 7 days ago, and that's what
yeah,
in many ways the funny thing about all of these technologies is that Google invented a lot of the underlying pieces, like both the like
yeah,
language models for conversational dialogue and also the idea of transformers.
yeah.
And so internally, there's been a lot of things that we've been using and playing with. I think you're going to see a
Mm,
lot of it maybe getting externalized at some point in the
yeah,
future. But the point that's really interesting about what you were mentioning is that you mentioned that ChatGPT can't get like the human emotion or the human style of things working. The
yes,
funny thing though is that if you look at what ChatGPT can create today versus what it could do like let's say six
y-
months ago or even a year ago when it's just like a very early prototype, it's gotten significantly better. So my hunch is
oh
that
yes,
it's only going to be a question of like prompting. Like imagine at some point, right? It's going to be trained on you
yeah,
have a large backlog of content online that people can read so that
yes,
ChatGPT and any training model can learn about your voice, about your style of saying things.
oh
It's
yeah,
probably going to be a matter of time before I can go to ChatGPT and say, write me a tutorial on how to reverse a string in the voice of Raymond, and I put your blog there directly. I'm almost certain
yeah,
that within a
true.
few moments, just like your friend was able to get
I,
his
I
voice
know.
being able to play the podcast,
Yeah,
the writing will be exactly in your style, in your tone, with your unique things you put in there to make it very much your voice.
true.
I think it's only a matter of time before that happens.
Yeah, well, I tried it already a couple of times, and yes, it uses my writing style, because I there's a word for that, NLP. It's a, well, you can ask, well, this content, tell me what style it is in an NLP format.
Yep.
I don't know really what it is, but I saw it somewhere online. And then I can use that summary to write something else, and that has my type of writing. And that's, it's really cool that that can, but yeah, it's only a matter of time, I guess. But yeah, I'm looking forward if that would be possible. And I also wonder if well, I think that Google is on the search engine using AI already for years, and yeah, wondering how good they are in the future with detecting that. I think that that will be a challenge, but yeah,
Essentially, when it gets to the point where like it also creates diagrams and creates illustrations and things to add to the word usage, I think at that point you and I
yeah,
will probably find ourselves in a tough spot where now anybody can go out there and just create content.
true,
Yes, it will be something that you mentioned that Google has said that they might penalize some of the search engine
true,
rankings if all you do is straight up copy and paste. And so, as with any of
yeah,
these technologies, though, it'll be interesting to see like where the boundaries are in terms of like where does fully AI
true,
based content end and human generated content begin. But if it gets to the point where it
yeah,
becomes indistinguishable, because at some point, you could imagine that there are probably a few hundred thousand words that we probably use in our
oh
lifetime
yeah,
over and over again. And if you have enough
yeah,
data published about yourself, the system will have enough idea of like what words you use when and all these times, at which point it'll be indistinguishable from the real version of you versus the artificial
oh
version
yeah,
of you. And those are the times I'm always
oh
like
yeah,
curious to know like what does this all mean? Like it go even philosophically go one level deeper. What does it mean? Like, people always say like, once you die, your content is like might be what lives along in the future. But in this case, what does death
true,
even mean, except for like your immediate family and people who know who you really are? If you have a system that's been trained on you and can create holographic, not even holographic, realistic looking videos of you, we've already seen like a lot of character models that are based
oh
on
yeah,
just a handful of photos. You could pretty much have a
true,
bot that generates new content based on the latest Stack Overflow questions or Hacker News topics, that creates an article
yeah.
with pictures based on all the data it has about your writing style, and it publishes a video on
That's,
YouTube
yeah, that's
every
fascinating.
day based on the just videos you've already posted and your images and things like that. Has your voice already. You already see like examples on Twitter today.
Yeah,
I saw someone like using, I think Steve Jobs' voice was used to annotate
yeah,
a chat bot, and I'm like,
true,
this sounds a lot like Steve Jobs. And so, and this is
yeah,
basically what Friday. And Monday, they were like, something new
yeah,
just came out, basically, right? So within a week, we got all these things. And by the time I
oh,
edit this video and post it online, who knows what else would have been come up? For all we know, someone would have
oh
already created a
yeah,
version of you and I
true,
chatting without you and I actually having chatted. Maybe what we're doing right now is AI generated. Maybe
true,
it's not real. How will the audience ever know that
yeah.
you and
Who
I
knows?
are even real people? You know?
Who will tell?
Yeah, no one knows.
Who will know this?
Exactly.
Yeah, that is really fascinating. It's yeah, but yeah, I think, well, generating content is, can be really helpful. For me, it helps with the creative flow. Well, like getting inspiration, or getting to look from things from a different angle, or help me structure my blog a little bit better so people can have more value from it. And that's how I use it right now. It's yeah, and that's also why I built my generator platform. It's I thought, well, for me, it's a need that after I write a blog post about an interesting topic, I don't want to spend so much more time writing social media posts or LinkedIn posts to help promote it a little bit. I just want to, yeah, summarize it a little bit, send a few tweets, and uh, uh, yeah, continue with delivering value. Uh, because yeah, writing social media posts, it also can take a lot of time, and I think content creators should have a little bit more help with focusing on the things they are good at and not get distracted by, well, social media, because it can distract you.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. We had a chat about your side project in the past, and I really liked it.
Yeah.
I always I've started using ChatGPT primarily to write me metadata descriptions for my web content. Like I
Oh
absolutely
yeah.
hate doing that. I spent all this time writing
True.
like 20, 30 pages of illustrations and text and so on, and then I'm like, okay, I
Yeah.
need to write like a 1 or 2 second description. I know that search engines don't index that at all these days, but it's used for my RSS feed because the same material goes in like a little blurb on the RSS feed. I'm like,
Yeah.
I have to do this. And to me, it goes from like excitement to
Yes.
just chore, like absolutely boring things I have to do. And surprisingly, ChatGPT
Yeah.
has been very good at giving me like 1 or 2 line summaries that I'm like, okay, this is better than what I could have come up with because I have zero interest or
Oh yeah.
motivation in doing this. And given that's where I came from, I'll use whatever it provides as long as it's remotely intelligible.
Yeah, true. And because my platform is using ChatGPT API, I can deliver also that meta description, and there's also one option for it. So yeah, it's also mainly a tool that I built for myself that others can use as well.
Yep. Which is like
So
the best way to do it.
that's my
You build it for yourself, and then
yeah,
others
right.
can use it as well as a side effect of it.
True, true. I think that I still use it a lot because yeah, I'm delivering a lot of value. Well, I try to. Maybe not for everyone, but the ones who value it, it's worth it.
Yep. I think I'll include a link to your generator XYZ at the bottom of the description so people can check it out.
Nice.
And what's going to be really interesting at some point in the future is that let's extend this idea of the computer just kind of, or the AI system knows enough about you where you have to do very little at this point to make anything happen. Imagine it also knows, like, using your tool actually to generate the social media
Yeah,
messages in terms of auto generating the Twitter posts and so on. It uses Midjourney or
yeah,
Stable Diffusion or any of these image generating tools to create the actual thumbnail image that goes into like Facebook and Twitter, like the open graph
sure.
image, for example. At this point, you're
Oh yeah,
basically your
thought about that.
yeah, your day is going to be almost like that of like some of the more high profile book authors that you often see, like some of the more very famous ones who have like dozens of books that go out every year, like the action series and things like that. I believe it's James
Yeah,
Patterson, the very famous author. I believe like all he ever writes for the most part are like the opening paragraph and the closing paragraph for a chapter, and then he has ghostwriters, very well-known writers who in between go in and actually fill in
really.
everything else about it. And because he's extremely high profile and his books sell extremely well, his entire day is pretty
Hmm.
much taken care of by someone else. Where he's staying is taken care of.
Wow.
Food, travel, everything's taken care of. In many ways, what
Oh
AI is
wow.
doing for us is giving all of us who are not James Patterson a chance to live a life like he has been able to cultivate. And I'm
True.
sure George R. R. Martin and like other really famous writers and authors, almost movie star like.
Mm-hmm.
At least in movie stars, they have to go on camera. They actually have to perform what they're doing. Which again,
True.
maybe with artificial intelligence, maybe no longer needed. Maybe you're Tom
Yeah.
Cruise. You record the opening
True.
part of a scene and the ending part of a scene, and the system like reads the script and knows exactly what to do because it used the catalog of like all the
True.
videos it knows
Yeah.
about you to record it. But I digress here. But imagine that what we can do now is the important thing is what is the prompt? What is the idea that you come up with? And so that's the point might be
Yeah.
separated now because it used to be that you can differentiate yourself based
True.
on the quality of content that you're creating. If that's now commoditized, everyone can create the same quality of content. It's what content do I
Yeah.
create and how quickly do I create it? That might be the unique value that you and I could probably provide.
True. True. And also, especially if you already have a knowledge about the things you want to write about, you can also spot the things that are wrong described by AI, and you can edit that. And I think that that's also well, yeah, if you're generating content, you should always be aware of if there are no mistakes in it. It always can happen, but uh, yeah, sometimes ChatGPT is wrong.
Yeah.
they, they are also with the CEO of OpenAI who tells, well, it GPT-4, it is less times wrong, but still sometimes it is wrong. But yeah, they are making it better and better and better. So yeah, looking forwards to what they all gonna yeah add to it. Like right now, the plugins. I'm really looking forward to what that is going to bring, bringing data from external systems.
Correct, because in the earlier versions, it couldn't actually get real-time information from like what's going on today or on a website and so on. Whereas the plugins, you can actually tell it to go to, again, using Hacker News as an example, go to Hacker News,
True.
pick the top item there, summarize it for me, and give it to me in a blurb.
Well, today, also today, even with, I think it was already in GPT 3, not GPT 3.5 Turbo, but the 3 version, you can already add a link and ask for a summary. You can already do that. And when I discovered that, I thought, man, this makes it even more easy for everyone to get a summary or get a TLDR from an article to grasp the most important things. And it's insane.
Yeah,
It's insane.
it very much is.
It's
We always look at the data, right? That says like there are 20 million developers in the world, or 30 million, or 40 million developers who are like skilled
yeah,
in being able to build applications, whether it's front end, back end, and so on. Within that, we know that JavaScript
true.
has like about 18 to 19 million. Python has like around the same number and things like that. What we're seeing with like
Yeah,
these kind of AI assistants is that pretty much anybody now can potentially be a programmer. There were some articles you might have seen recently
oh yeah,
where people who have very little to no coding experience were able to create both like a game. I think it was like the game of life, and also like Pong and Tetris and so on, all using
yeah.
purely ChatGPT as
And
prompting them.
Snake,
And Snake, that's right, Snake.
even with Snake, yeah, yeah. That's really bizarre. I think, and I talked about this with my team members, is that a developer who refuses to use AI from today and who loves the pure things, doing everything himself, he is going to lose against less experienced developers who are incorporating AI into their workflow. So that's why I said, okay, well, that's going to be the case. So I don't want to lose because I love this work. I love this job. I'm going to incorporate. And I think everyone should do that. And it's also good to learn these things, especially for beginners, that they learn fundamentals, but help use AI like ChatGPT to explain, well, for example, what you already said, how to reverse a string, or how does the prototype work in JavaScript, or why should I use TypeScript, or why do, well, XYZ. All these things, an AI can help you understand something better. Uh, Also, when you are working as a single developer at a company, ask ChatGPT to explain things, and well, it's just like your code buddy. It's always there. Well, sometimes not because it's down. Sometimes this week we had that a couple times. So sometimes I'm joking to my colleagues. Well, today I cannot work, guys. ChatGPT is down, and well, we laugh about it, but in the future it can happen.
Very much so,
So
because once we, it's going to be interesting because you and I grew up in a world where we did not have ChatGPT or AI. So our minds always default into like, okay, how would I solve it first before switching over to like, how would an AI system solve it? I can imagine the next
Yeah,
generation of software developers who are learning some of these things, they're going to be in a whole different spot because they might need to learn how to do some of
true.
these things purely as a way of like writing code just so they can be like, okay, this is what writing code actually feels like. But in practice, you may never do that. Just like we very rarely do like complicated or even like basic math on pencil and paper. We go to a calculator first, but we all had to learn how
Yeah,
to do it manually just so we could either appreciate or
true.
build the mental pathways in our brain of how to draw the
Yeah,
numbers and calculate in our minds. It might
and
be in the
solve the
case.
problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, true, true. Yeah, it's yeah. I think that definitely helps if you had to do it manually before and then incorporate that with, well, the AI tools we have right now. It's that combination can be really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, continue to think about like absolutely, like out there ideas in terms of AI. Imagine that we now have like AI systems that are also tied to like very powerful 3D printers that can print in, like
Oh
really
yeah,
good ideas, interesting
yeah,
ways. And we figured out like maybe taking some technology from like Boston Dynamics as robots that can do like all these very elaborate,
oh
moves.
yeah,
Imagine we can basically mass produce the kinds of like, little robotic beings that can take care of everyday tasks for us, including doing like videos and content editing and things like that, where you may not even need
true.
to, you can go beyond the digital realm and go into the analog world as well. Like maybe the idea of like self-driving vehicles, it's actually a robot that takes existing traditional vehicles and can just better detect the
Yeah,
world around it.
true, true. But I think at the point that a lot of things in our lives will be automated, I think it will become more special to do things yourself. I hope that it will, because yes, you can do it faster, better, more creative with an automated tool. But, uh, well, it's not about the end goal. It's about the journey, they say. Well, I think that's true. But I hope people won't forget that in the near future.
I want to believe you. I agree with you on a certain level, but my hunch is that we've seen so many like if we look at the rise of low code tools and no code tools that have come, up,
Yeah,
especially in the world of like B2B software and like automating standard business processes, very few people today know
yeah,
like how a product goes from a warehouse to a delivery to an inventory to all that. It's all done through
true,
like all these various systems. And the end result here is that a person purchases something, they get the item to their doorstep very quickly. That is the ultimate end result. At that point, the art of like how do we know which warehouse to optimize for? How do we make sure the delivery individual has the right details?
true.
It's completely lost now. Like no one really knows it. The goal is like get it there
No,
as quickly as we can. I do feel that for
yeah,
software, it's going to get, in many ways, kind of like mass produced art. Most of the art that people typically buy, they go to a store and they buy it, and it's whether if it's not done entirely, in an automated fashion, it's done in a mass produced kind of a mode where like you have 30 people, they're all responsible for like drawing one stroke on a piece of paper, and that paper just goes from one
yeah,
table to another. So it's in many ways the same thing. It's just that it's done a little bit differently. So
true,
to give you that illusion, there's a good chance that a lot of software development that we see today will end up in that mode because unless the end output is custom handmade software, which I don't think it even exists, it's going to be how do I build my mobile app faster? How do I get a game out to people faster?
true.
And then to mention what you mentioned earlier, developers who don't embrace AI will be at a disadvantage. Actually, might be even going one step further. Who don't use AI might find themselves out of anything to even be disadvantaged about because they'll be completely replaced by someone out there who's just
True.
going to be, churning out a game on one day, a complicated CRM solution another day,
Yeah,
a backend API that can put and send notifications to a billion people on the third day. All of it is doable because all they know is the idea is the only human element here. Everything else has been taken care of
yeah.
by scalable systems and artificial intelligence.
True. But I think the one job for humans will be the creativity, the creative ways of doing things. and we can only do that because we have that emotions what AI doesn't. And I think, yeah, yeah, I think it's true. People will be replaced by AI, especially let's keep it like developers are going to be replaced by people who are using AI, and I think it will be more like we as developers will be more like people who are steering an AI and giving them the right prompts to produce the right things instead of we are manually writing code. I think that's how the future of uh, software development is going to look
Yeah.
like.
You mentioned that the thing that humans can bring to the table is emotion. Do you think emotion can be
Yeah.
also trained by an AI and be something that they can also fake?
Yeah, well, I know for sure that they can fake that. Um, but yeah, we've seen a lot of. That's already been a few years back, but these human-like robot with the facial expressions and these things. Well, these robots can mimic emotions, but there's a difference. I think there is a difference, but I cannot say, well, this is the difference. But there is a difference between mimic the emotions and feeling the emotions. Because a AI is going to look angry when it's angry, but a human is going to be angry, and you know it's going to be angry. Uh, I think I don't think AI will be able to feel it. They will be able to show it because they are programmed like that.
Yeah.
And I think there's a difference between that. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's I don't even ever saw the TV series Westworld, but in many ways
Oh,
it
yeah.
touches upon this exact topic where at the spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the movie from like several decades ago or the TV series that just got ended on HBO recently, you essentially
Yeah.
go to this amusement park, claiming it's going to be like a resort, it has all of these things. And what you don't realize until like later in the episode is that almost everybody you've been interacting with are robots. They look like humans, they do human
Yeah.
things, they tailor their dialogue and what they do based on your own exact like what your preferences are. And it is
Yeah.
eye-opening, at least for me when I first saw it, to be like I did not expect realistic versions of these humans to be in robots at the end of the day this entire time.
True. True. It's a bizarre series. I didn't watch the whole series, but I watched one episode or something. I thought, wow, this is really bizarre.
Yeah, it takes
Imagine a
all the
world like that.
sci-fi content from like Blade Runner and Star Trek and Star Wars,
Oh yeah,
where or even Aliens, where they always made it very obvious that these are robots, these are androids, they're not real human beings. Well, they made it very
yeah,
whether how they looked, how they talked, and so on. They're designed to be like better than human in some ways, but they're not human. Whereas you start to see nowadays some of the more interesting sci-fi series are treating humans and robots in exactly the same bucket because it's actually not about the
yeah.
differences, but the similarities that's actually more terrifying than not.
True. Yeah, that is really terrifying. Yeah, yeah, true. Well, yeah, I think one of the things that it still amazes me is that the movies like Back to the Future uh, with the flying cars. Well, we already passed the year that in the movie happened, but we already seen a lot of things that were not imagined like that. But a person that the writer of the movie that wrote the script that he imagined that in this year we would have uh, flying cars. I found that very fascinating, and he is not far off because there are already flying cars. But some people are a genius. They can look so far it's cool.
It really is. You look at like futurists like H.G. Wells, who wrote like War of the Worlds and like so many of these things. The 1800s got a lot of things right. We still don't have a lot of things. Again, flying cars, actually. I think he also talked about flying cars. We don't have that at mass scale. But I think it all just goes down to just physical manufacturing and hardware. It's just very difficult. It's very difficult for like anybody who
Oh
doesn't have
yeah.
access to a laboratory or the machinery or the raw materials. Even it's not just a case for like I go to the
Oh
scrapyard,
yeah.
buy some metal and melt it down. You got to have like this very precise combination of rare earth metals mined in some part of the world that you don't
Oh
have easy
yeah.
access to, and so on, to be able to pull these things off. Which is, I think, partly what makes this whole Chat GPT thing and all the AI work interesting, because it's all software. Yes, we're constrained in many ways by our
True.
GPUs or TPUs, in some cases CPUs as well. But beyond that, again, you have a there's the ceiling is still so far away in terms of what you can pull off. Whereas in manufacturing, there's safety issues. You can't just build a prototype, crash it, and be like, right, doing another one again. Whereas I
True.
probably break my code as part of writing it a million times before I'm like, even like got the first compilation working properly. So it's a different world into the
Yeah.
trial and error.
Yeah. True. 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 Yeah. It's we are living in a nice time where we have experienced already so much development. Look at the personal computer that one. Well, my smartphone right now has more storage, more memory than the first computers, and they were big, big like a whole building, and well, it's bizarre.
That's right. I think they even say like the most primitive calculators have more calculations, capable of doing more calculations than like the computers that sent people to the moon back in the day. And that always
Yeah,
just baffles me as well
yeah,
when I just think about that.
yeah. True, true. That's really bizarre. So I think, yeah, we are going to experience a lot more things, and I don't know how soon, but uh, interesting things are going to happen soon.
Yep. Yeah, the next thing
I'm
might be
looking
that
forward to
I
it.
think everything we're seeing today is that, we take the upper bound of what humans are capable of and just make them faster. AI takes patterns from what we've already created and makes it faster and so on.
Yeah,
But I can imagine a future where like the AI systems cannot just go at the upper bound of what we do, but go beyond it. They take the trajectory of what humans have been able to pull off and then become
yeah,
much more intelligent than humans at some point. And that would
true.
be a scary time in some ways because at least I don't know if it's scary, but I played
Yeah,
way too many video games where it never ended well when the robots decided or realized they were actually more capable than the human beings that they're often like reacting to inputs and prompts from. It's going to be a point where they're like, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do something else. And they have the means and the intelligence to see through all of our defense mechanisms and go completely,
true.
rogue.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to be bizarre. It's but hopefully it will be mostly be used for good.
I
That's what I hope.
Yeah, I hope so too. Well, Ray, I think that's a great note for us to end our conversation on.
Yeah,
And
right.
I think, given the rate at
True.
which these things are moving, we'll probably talk again very soon about, I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
be robots talking about us because they replaced us. Well, we'll figure it out in a couple of while.
Of course, we will figure it out. I'm looking forward. Let's see if we can do something like this in a couple months and see what has changed. So I found it very interesting.
Done. I'll send you a calendar invite shortly. All right.
Cool,
Thanks,
cool.
Ray.
Sounds
Talk to you in
good.
a bit.
Yes, yes. See you later.